This is the Latin Alternative. Today we're honored to have a longtime friend of the show, Gustavo Santaolalla, with us for a very special Takeover episode. Gustavo is one of the most influential and visionary artists in the history of Latin music. His production work on albums by Cafe Tacvba, Julieta Venegas and Molotov, among many others, single-handedly changed the very essence and sound of Latin rock. He has also won 2 Academy Awards for his work on movie soundtracks, and is the leader of groundbreaking electro-tango orchestra Bajofondo. This being a very short summary of his many accomplishments. Gustavo, welcome to the show.
Oh, man, thank you so much for that presentation. I'm very, very happy to share this time with you, Ernesto.
Well, let's get started with some music we're going to listen to. This is a brand new single that Bajofondo has released. Let's listen to it. It's Listo Pa Bailar, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the background behind it. This is the Latin Alternative. Today, a very special guest, Gustavo Santaolalla. We just listened to Listo Pa Bailar, Bajofondo, with Natalia Oreiro. Now, Gustavo, I'm very interested about this. The new Bajofondo single includes a version in Russian with Uruguayan star Natalia Oreiro. Tell us a little bit about this new song.
Yeah, well, actually, it combines both. There's an America version and a Russian version. But then obviously, because people wanted, we have a full version in Russian, a full version in Spanish. But actually, the song was conceived as a bilingual song. The story is as follows. Natalia Oreiro is from Uruguay, but has developed an incredible career in Argentina. She's very well known as a big movie star, but she also sings, and she developed a relationship with the Russian audience for 20 years. She did a telenovela 20 years ago called Muñeca Brava and became huge star in Russia. And she's been going there and, singing. She fills stadiums. I mean, a place that perhaps, you can see Sting, stadium of that size, she can fill perhaps two of those, and people sing her songs in Spanish. So she has a deep connection. Aside that is a friend, she's married to a great guitar player, Ricardo Moyo, a dear friend of mine from Divididos. And Bajofondo, we have traveled and played around the world. I mean, we have been, three times in China, 4 times in Korea, all over Europe. We have gold records in Greece, the Nordic countries, in Africa. We have played everywhere, Latin America, United States, North America. But Russia, we never played. But we know that we have a big audience there for those things, never really happened. But for example, the Russian gymnastic team, the feminine Russian gymnastic team, use Bajofondo music for their they use it in the Olympics games, and they use it for the routines. They use our music. So it became this idea because of the Uruguayan Argentinian connection that Bajofondo also has, because we are half Argentinians, half Uruguayans, of doing, and the Russian connection, because all of this, to do this song. So we took a hit of Bajofondo, which was Pa Bailar, and rework it. I mean, it's a new song, basically. It's a new melody, total new melody, and lyrics that kind of reflect a little bit the moment that we're living, this special dark moment that we are living around the world, and try to turn it, in a way around, and try to find something that we can still uplift our spirits, through simply dancing. So Listo Pa Bailar is a little bit all of that.
Wonderful. And today we have a very special challenge for you, Gustavo, because we asked you to pick only 5 songs from your own career and 5 songs by artists that inspired you. And the next song has a wonderful title, Canción de Cuna para un Niño Astronauta. Tell us a little bit about that.
Canción de Cuna para un Niño Astronauta is a song that I wrote when I was 18 years old, 17, I believe, but let's say 18 years old. It came out in the album that I did when I was 18 years old, my first album with Arcoiris. And a few years ago, just probably 3 years ago, I decided to do something that I've never did in my life before, which was to press the button of pause and try to look, how did I get here? I'm always, looking in front and not really looking, what I've done. And I wanted to really see how did I get here, and I decided to review my career through my songs. And reviewing my songs, I found out, a lot of things that were that really interested me. Some things is this permanence, this sort of atemporal, out of time, that some songs have. And Canción de Cuna para un Niño Astronauta is, for me, one of the most modern songs that I've wrote in my life, and it's still today, I think, it's an extremely modern song. And so that's why I think even, some of your people from your audience might be interested in going and checking the original version, the Arcoiris version. But this is the version that I do now with the band that I tour now. So this is Canción de Cuna para un Niño Astronauta.
Ni celofán, hijo del tiempo, rey de mi siglo.
This is the Latin alternative.
Hola, this is Gustavo Santaolalla. You're listening to the Latin Alternative, so keep on listening.
When the ghost of a sweet raving beast connects with your soul, when the thought of the unfinished fight won't let you go, when injustice still feeds on the frail, we all know that the power of freak needs to speak to the world once more. Maybe chains are not broken by turns its back on all rights, there'll be news to report on the battles begun in the valley of last resort. The truth is the point of the arrow. They fed us lies in the past, and the road ahead is narrow but fast. In the end, we'll shout, life matters at last. If regret was contagious, the world would be drowning in tears. Does the plague open hearts, open minds, so the world finally hears? Is a tipping point past when we witness a life cut short? Sin the honor God formed in the valley of last resort. Oh, truth is the point of the arrow. They fed us lies in the past, and the road ahead is narrow but fast. In the end, we'll shout, life matters at last. And the road ahead is narrow but fast. In the end, we'll shout, life matters at last. And the anthems of freedom won't be sung by the voices we've lost. Bless the hearts, names, and faces, the shock of the deadly cause. Warriors kneeling for justice demanded by the people's court. Send the honor God formed in the valley of last resort. Oh, truth is the point of the arrow. They fed us lies in the past, and the road ahead is narrow but fast. In the end, we'll shout, life matters
You're listening to the Latin Alternative, and we have a special takeover episode with the legendary Gustavo Santaolalla, artist, producer extraordinaire, movie film composer, recent documentary maker for the Netflix series Rompan Todo. Anyway, that track was called Valley of Last Resort. It was Gustavo Santaolalla and one of my favorite blues guitarists in recent years, Gary Clark Jr. And if you like what you're hearing on The Latin Alternative, please do follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Latin Alternative. On Twitter, our ID is Latin Alt. You can also stream the weekly podcast edition of the show by searching for The Latin Alternative on Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio, or simply heading to thelatinalternative.com. Gustavo, please tell us, how did that collaboration with Gary Clark Jr. come about from a recent film called Freak Power?
Well, this song is, I was contacted to make the music score for a movie called Freak Power, The Ballad or the Bomb. And it was a movie about this great journalist, Hunter Thompson, this radical journalist from the 60s. And I scored the movie, and actually, looking at the movie and, seeing, images of, the civil rights movement, seeing, images that connect with the killings of, the Kennedys and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and seeing the demonstrations of people, the Democratic Convention in 68, Kent State, and the students killed, the police brutality, the racism, and then somehow watching the TV not that long ago, it was really incredible to see, how pathetic, in a way, we've been, all this year. It seems that nothing has changed, really. So once the movie was scored, there was a need for a song for the titles. And that, for that, I thought, first of all, of a dear friend of mine and somebody that I admire deeply, which is Paul Williams. I had the chance to collaborate with him previously in a couple of songs for The Book of Life, the animated movie. That was our first collaboration. We've been working also in a musical version of Pan's Labyrinth with him for some time now. And so I called Paul. That was very, very, natural for me to call him. And we decided to write a song that not only, connected with the movie itself, but also with precisely this connection between those days and that time with today, and to record the song, to sing the song, which I play and I sing too, but as the lead singer and the lead guitar player, I contact somebody that I became friend with through Eric Clapton. I had the honor to be invited by Eric Clapton to score the documentary about his life called, Life in 12 Bars. And after that, he invited me to participate in Crossroads, this unbelievable festival with the greatest guitar players in the world. And that's where I met Gary Clark. Once we finished our set, Gary came to congratulate us. He really liked what we did. And I thought, who could sing this song? It was tough to really find today a singer. Obviously, you will think of somebody like, Bruce Springsteen or Patti Smith or somebody like that. But today, a musician of now, contemporary musician that could sing a song like this, it was hard to find. And I thought Gary would be perfect. And he loved the song. And that's how it came to fruition.
And now we're going to listen to a track from a very special album that's also a favorite of mine. A record that seemingly came out of nowhere but stayed in everybody's heart and soul. I'm talking about Ronroco. And with that in mind, I wanted to ask you, Gustavo, you recently have composed music for video games, for television series. At one point you wrote a musical based on Bajofondo. You also invested in a winery in your native Argentina. What is it, do you think, that drives this prodigious creativity of yours?
Well, leaving aside, which I think, it could add a little bit of spice to this concept that I'm going to tell you. But when I, think about what is really the reason that I do what I do, I immediately sort of go back to when I was a little kid and ask my dad, what did he want me to be when I grew up, And my dad was a tremendous, incredible man and a great inspiration for me all my life. I lost him when I was very young, but I remember everything that he told me, And so when pushed, because he just wanted me to be whatever I wanted to be, but when pushed to say, no, but tell me that, what would you like me to be when I grew up? He said, well, if you ask me like this, I have to, well, probably, or either a doctor, a medical doctor, or a priest. And I thought, well, I actually didn't become any of those, but in a way, a little bit of those. I think that what I do with music somehow, can heal people, and can make them, and it has definitely a spiritual connection. I realized the connection between music and the spiritual world since I was 5 and I started playing guitar. But I really think that what I do basically, or the motor that pushes and propels my creativity is something that has to do with trying to affect people in a positive way, trying to use this gift to actually, move people, to make them or either reflect on something, or either being motivated, inspire them, or just have a good time, forget about something also. And in that case, wine can also serve as that, as something that can open a conversation and open your heart to, obviously, everything in moderation, including moderation.
And this is certainly true about this record, Ronroco. We're going to listen to Iguazu. This is a real, this is the epitome of a solo album, isn't it, Gustavo?
Yeah, I think so. It's a magical album. It's an album that took 13 years to be made. It was recordings that I did with my dear friend, brother and companion of the road, Aníbal Kerpel. We were recording these pieces of mine that actually were never meant to be anywhere but for me, in a way, so I was contacted by Jaime, but not by Jaime Torres, but by a record company to actually put together a compilation by Jaime Torres. Jaime Torres, for people that don't know, was, because he passed away a few years ago, but one of the greatest charango players in the world, if not the greatest, but one of the greatest, definitely, with Ernesto Cabur. And for me to meet him, it's kind of like a Ravi Shankar of the charango, so people can understand a little bit. So when I met him, I was, so impressed and a little bit, afraid in a way too, intimidated. But I wanted to show him what I did with these instruments, with the charango and the ronroco. And so finally, I gave him, I remember at the time, a cassette. And I told him, Jaime, this is something that some friends of mine do. 3 days later, he called me and he said, you play here. You can't fool me. You're playing here and you should make a record. And I said, well, I was a little bit afraid because I don't play with your technique. And I, just do, because I finger pick, which usually, you don't do with those instruments, And he said, no, listen, there's no rules about, you have captured the spirit of these instruments. You should make a record. And that's so the next 6 months was trying to put together all the recordings that I had and then record some new stuff. One piece actually that I did with him too. And that's when I recorded Iguazu. And Iguazu has become such a piece, that everybody wanted to use. It's been in Sally Potter movie. It's been in a Michael Mann movie. It's been, at the time, it was one of the most hated pieces by film composers because when directors temp their movies, they used to be Iguazu every time for, because the track seems to, I remember Michael Mann. The first time it was Michael Mann's in The Insider. And when I got a phone call from Michael Mann's office that he wanted to meet with me because he was using a track of Ronroco in the movie, I thought, oh, man, what is this? This is a contemporary movie. And when I saw the scene with him, I could tell that he was working unbelievably well. And then, so that's the story. It is, Osvaldo Golijov has defined it as almost like a classical piece, like he thinks that is like a classic piece of the classical world.
Well, I'm very pleased that Gustavo Santaolalla picked a track from Ronroco because it's definitely a personal favorite. Here he is with Iguazu.
You're tuned in to the Latin Alternative in a special takeover episode with Gustavo Santaolalla. He may not be a household name, but if you're a fan of Latin alternative music, Latin rock, you definitely need to get to know him. Of course, Gustavo has produced some iconic artists over the years, ranging from Juanes, Molotov, Maldita Vecindad, Cafe Tacvba, but of course, he also makes some incredible music of his own. That track we heard, Ando Rodando, came from his album Santaolalla. And just as a side note, for any of you who are Netflix subscribers, please do check out this amazing film that Gustavo was executive producer of called Rompan Todo, or Break It All. It is a history of the Latin rock movement, or rock en español, or rock en tu idioma. There's many different variations that genre has been called over the years.
Ando Rodando is a song that kind of like, resumes a little bit of my quest in life. And it's also related to this sort of, fever for traveling that I had, from a very early age. When I was a little kid, I used to go to embassies and look for brochures, and I dreamt about traveling to, different countries around the world. And I come from a little town in the outskirts of Buenos Aires called Ciudad Jardín. I, grew up with dirt roads. I mean, when I left home, we still didn't had pavement, I finally did. My dream came true, and I've been around the world several times, literally around the world. And Ando Rodando sort of, expresses that thing. Ando Rodando means, like going, sort of rolling,
You're tuned in to the Latin Alternative. ¿Cómo estás? You're plugged in to the Latin Alternative.
And now we're moving on to a segment of this takeover episodes that I really treasure. This is where we're going to ask our guest Gustavo Santaolalla to pick a handful of tracks by other artists that played a big part in his musical education or inspired him in some way. Gustavo, we have a number of your picks here. We have some favorites in common. What is your first to pick for us today?
My first pick is a track by the Beatles. I mean, the Beatles really changed my life. Although I was playing guitar since I was 5 years old, and I had my first folk group when I was 10, and I had my first electric guitar when I was 12 years old. When I was 13 and I saw the Beatles, I knew that was what I wanted to do in my life, to put together a band and to make music, and that was it. They changed for me. They're, one of the greatest cultural events of the last century. So I picked it. It's very hard to pick a Beatles song. I mean, there's so many that have influenced me, but I picked In My Life because I think it's just a beautiful song and talks about the things we're, in a way, connected to the identity, to who we are, where do we come from, but it's also a love song. So, and it's one of those, it's very, I think, not the very beginning, because he has written already songs like I'm a Loser, but it's the beginnings, of Lennon starting to write things that were really not so much, boy meets girl, but things that reflect a deeper views on life in general, I could have picked, Across the Universe, I could have picked Strawberry Fields, I could have picked so many other songs, but definitely In My Life is one of my favorites.
I'm traveling in some vehicle. I'm sitting in some cafe. A defector from the petty world. shall shut love away. There's comfort in melancholy when there's no need to explain. It's just as natural as the weather in this moody sky today.
This is a Latin alternative. We just traveled back to the year 1976 with Gustavo Santaolalla as our special musical guide. We listened to Johnny Mitchell and Hejira. I was shocked, Gustavo, because Hejira actually is one of my all-time favorite albums, regardless of genre. I just adore this record. Hejira, such a great song. Why did you pick Johnny Mitchell?
Well, Johnny Mitchell is one of great inspirations in my life as a songwriter. I mean, she's definitely an unbelievable lyricist. Also, the use of open tunings and the connection between different styles of music, because, you know, she has definitely a folk background, but also, you know, definitely a jazz there is present in her harmonies and stuff. And I find Hejira as really a peak in her career as a composer, as an interpreter, and there's so many songs. I mean, in all her career, but in that album, I mean, you know, "Refugee of the Roads" and "Song for Sharon" and "Amelia" and "Coyote." I mean, it's just unbelievable. She's amazing. I think, I mean, she's obviously today with this wonderful change that we're seeing in the world of really a truly appreciation of women. I think in a way, I mean, she's been a pioneer in a way of that. I mean, really pushing the envelope as a composer in a world dominated by men, and, you know, surpassing lots of them, you know, most of other singer-songwriters. She's truly amazing.
And now we're going to go to the very essence of South American folklore. And it makes sense because Gustavo's music, there is so much of the heart of folk in his own music. Gustavo, you picked the track by Atahualpa Yupanqui from Argentina.
Yes, well, the same thing goes to Atahualpa. I mean, there's so many tracks that Atahualpa could pick of Atahualpa, but I found in him a tremendous inspiration, not only in the songwriting, but also in his guitar playing.
Porque no engraso los ejes, me llaman abandonado. Porque no engraso los ejes, me llaman abandonado. Si a mí me gusta que suenen, pa' que los quiero engrasar. Si a mí me gusta que suenen, pa' que los quiero engrasar. Es demasiado aburrido seguir y seguir la huella. Es demasiado aburrido seguir y seguir la huella. Demasiado largo el camino sin nada que me entretenga. No necesito silencio, yo no tengo en qué pensar. No necesito silencio, yo no tengo en qué pensar. Tenía, pero hace tiempo, ahora ya no pienso más. tenía, pero hace tiempo, ahora ya no pienso más. Los ejes de mi carreta nunca los voy a engrasar.
Guinevere had green eyes like yours, milady, like yours. She'd walk down through the garden in the morning after it rained. Peacocks wandered aimlessly underneath an orange tree. Why can't she see me?
You've been listening to The Latin Alternative and a special takeover episode with the legendary Latin rock producer Gustavo Santaolalla, who's also an amazing artist, film composer, wears many different hats, member of Bajofondo, the electro tango group. We were talking to Gustavo about some of the artists and songs that influenced him and his favorite songs. He picked one of my personal favorites, Guinevere, from Crosby, Stills and Nash. Can't go wrong with that track. And if you like what you're hearing on The Latin Alternative, please do follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Latin Alternative, and on Twitter, our ID is Latin Alt. You can also stream the weekly podcast edition of the show by searching for The Latin Alternative on Spotify, Apple, or iHeartRadio, or simply heading to thelatinalternative.com.
Tell us about that song, Gustavo.
Well, that song, I mean, is for me connects in a way to Atahualpa Yupanqui because it has a milonga rhythm. It's a song by one of also great inspiration, one of the artists that has inspired me immensely, which is David Crosby. From his days in the Byrds to obviously Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, to also his solo work. You know, he produced the first Joni Mitchell album, by the way, and he taught Joni Mitchell open tunings. So he's a guy that is connected, you know, for in many ways to things that I liked and that I love. But this track is exquisite, and it is from the first Crosby, Stills, Nash album. It had to be there, definitely. Miles Davis has done a beautiful version of this song, by the way.
Gustavo, tell us about your last selection by Eduardo Rovira.
One more time, and this is the last one, that also there's many tracks. We could have been, you know, Tango en Tres, we could have picked Que Lo Paren or La Depre, but I picked Bobe. I think it resumes a little bit of things because you can hear the electric guitar and the use of the bass. I mean, he has a fantastic album called Sónico, which is electric guitar, bass, electric bass, and bandoneon. And Eduardo Rovira is a guy that unfortunately died without really, you know, getting to develop his career as, you know, Astor did. But he is the other guy, because there's been a lot of modernists, you know, after Astor, but that always end up trying to sound or kind of like Piazzolla. Rovira is the only one that actually really had something else to say. And no, it's not a coincidence also that he not only did tango, you know, inspired music with bandoneon, but he did also folk, Argentinian folk, you know, so he has chacarera, he has different things. And has been a tremendous inspiration for Bajofondo too. He's one of our biggest, much more so than Piazzolla. We love Astor and I love Piazzolla, don't get me wrong. But Rovira, I think, you know, that has been someone that is not really valued as I think he should. And I think it's a matter of time also, anyhow.
Well, here he is, Eduardo Rovira with Bobe. Gustavo Santaolalla, thank you for the music. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ernesto, once again for giving me the opportunity to share a few moments with your audience, and congratulations on this great program.
I'm Josh Norek for The Latin Alternative. The technical producer is Dave Michaels for WEXT. The Latin Alternative is a production of Josh Norek and WEXT Amsterdam, New York, a listener-supported service of WMHT Educational Telecommunications.